The handcuffs dug into the wrists of the man in the bespoke suit. To the officers of the Pine Ridge Police Department, he was just another statistic, a suspect who matched a description that didn't exist. Sergeant Doug Walsh laughed as he shoved the man into the back of the cruiser, mocking his claim of innocence. Walsh thought he was the apex predator in his town. He had no idea that the man in his back seat wasn't just a suspect. He was Special Agent Ray Bennett, the head of a federal anti-corruption task force, and he had been hunting Walsh. Walsh didn't just arrest a man, he arrested the end of his career. Soon, 17 badges would hit the floor, and the city of Pine Ridge was about to write a check for $10 million. The southern heat pressed down like a physical weight on the asphalt of Route 31 until the air shimmered in waves of distortion. It was the kind of stifling afternoon where patience wears thin and tempers snap like dry twigs. Ray Bennett adjusted the air conditioning vent in his rental, a charcoal gray Cadillac CT5. He wasn't fond of flashy cars, but the cover story required it. To the locals, Ray was a logistics consultant scouting warehouse locations for a mid-sized shipping firm out of Birmingham. It was boring, bureaucratic, and specifically designed not to raise eyebrows, unless you were a cop looking for a reason to ruin someone's day. Ray checked his mirrors. He was maintaining a perfect 45 miles per hour in a 45 zone. His hands rested at 10 and 2. He was a 42-year-old black man with a master's degree in criminal psychology and 12 years in the Bureau, currently serving as a senior special agent in the Public Corruption Unit. He knew exactly what he looked like to the sharks patrolling these waters. Bait. He saw the nose of the Dodge Charger dip in his rearview mirror before the lights flickered on. Blue and red strobes cut through the glare of the sun. Ray didn't sigh. He didn't panic. He felt a cold, sharp clarity wash over him. Here we go, he thought. Phase 1. He signaled, slowed down gradually, and pulled onto the gravel shoulder, coming to a complete stop. He rolled all 4 windows down, standard procedure to put the officer at ease, and placed his hands plainly on the steering wheel, fingers spread. The police cruiser sat behind him for a long, uncomfortable minute. Ray watched the side mirror. He saw the door open. A boot hit the gravel, then another. 2 officers. One approached the passenger side, hand resting on his holster. The other, a thick-necked man with oak leaf sunglasses and a buzz cut that was clinging to the last days of his youth, strutted toward the driver's side. This was Sergeant Doug Walsh. Ray knew his face. He knew his badge number, 492. He knew Walsh's credit score, his mistress's name and mobile, and the fact that Walsh had 3 excessive force complaints that had mysteriously vanished from the internal server weeks earlier. Walsh leaned down, his face appearing in the window. The smell of chewing tobacco and stale coffee wafted into the car. "License and registration," Walsh said. "No greeting, no good afternoon, just a demand." "Good afternoon, officer," Ray said, his voice level and calm. "Is there a reason for the stop?" "License and registration," Walsh repeated, leaning in further. His eyes were hidden behind the reflective lenses, but the sneer was visible. "And don't make me ask you a 3rd time, or we're going to have a problem." "I'm reaching into my jacket pocket for my wallet," Ray narrated his movement slowly. "My registration is in the glove box." "Do it slowly." Ray produced his license. He handed it over. Walsh snatched it. Looking at the D.C. address, he scoffed. "Washington, D.C., huh? You're a long way from home, boy," Walsh muttered. "What's a D.C. suit doing in Pine Ridge?" "I'm a consultant. I'm here on business." "Consultant?" Walsh repeated, looking at his partner on the other side of the car. "Officer Jenkins. You hear that, Jenkins? We got a consultant." "Usually when I see a car this nice driven by a guy like you around here, they're consulting on how to move narcotics up Interstate 65. Ray's jaw tightened, but his pulse remained steady. "I assure you, Sergeant, I have no contraband. If you check my identification properly, you'll see." "Get out of the car," Walsh barked, stepping back and unsnapping the retention strap on his holster. "Officer, for what reason? I've complied with—" "I smell marijuana," Walsh lied. The lie was so casual, so practiced, it slid out of his mouth like grease. Probable cause. "Get out of the vehicle now." Ray knew there was no marijuana. He hadn't smoked a day in his life, and the rental smelled like new car spray and leather. But he also knew the game. If he resisted, Walsh would escalate. If he reached for his phone, Walsh might shoot. Ray undid his seatbelt. He opened the door and stepped out, rising to his full 6'2" height. He towered slightly over Walsh, which clearly irritated the sergeant. Turn around, hands on the hood, spread them. As Ray turned, he spoke clearly. Sergeant, before you proceed, you need to look inside my wallet. Behind the driver's license, there is a second form of identification. I advise you to look at it. Walsh jammed his knee into the back of Ray's leg, forcing him off balance. Shut your mouth. You don't give me advice. You stand there and you shut up. Walsh patted him down aggressively, his hands searching rough and fast. He pulled Ray's phone out and tossed it on the hood, cracking the screen. He pulled the wallet out and threw it to Jenkins. Jenkins, run him. See if he's got warrants. I'm going to tear this car apart. Officer, Ray said, his face pressed against the hot metal of the roof. I am a federal agent. My credentials are in that wallet. If you continue this search, you are violating federal law. Walsh stopped. The silence on the side of the road was deafening. A cicada buzzed loudly in the nearby pines. Walsh walked up to Ray's ear, whispering, You think you're the first punk to try and tell me he's a Fed? I bought a fake badge online for a costume party last week. You ain't special. Walsh grabbed Ray's wrists, twisting them behind his back with unnecessary force, snapping the handcuffs on tight. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct, resisting a lawful order, and suspicion of trafficking, Walsh announced, shoving Ray toward the cruiser. You are making a mistake, Sergeant Walsh, Ray said, his voice dropping an octave, losing the citizen tone and adopting the command voice he used in interrogations. A career-ending mistake. The only mistake I made, Walsh grinned, opening the back door, was not pulling you over sooner. He shoved Ray inside. As the door slammed shut, Ray watched through the caged glass. He saw Walsh high-five Jenkins. He saw them pop the trunk of the Cadillac. Ray closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had to trust the protocol. He had to trust that the tracker in his heel was transmitting, but mostly he had to endure the next stretch. He wasn't trapped with them. They were trapped with him. The holding cell at the Pine Ridge Police Precinct smelled of industrial bleach and old sweat. It was a concrete box painted a depressing shade of institutional gray. Ray sat on the steel bench, his suit jacket folded neatly beside him, a small act of defiance to maintain his dignity. They hadn't let him make a call. They had confiscated his watch, his belt, his shoelaces, and his wallet. They had tossed him in here to cool off while Walsh wrote up the paperwork. From his position in the cell, Ray had a limited but crucial view of the bullpen. He watched the ecosystem of the department. It was rotting from the inside out. He saw Officer Jenkins sitting at a desk, typing slowly, looking nervous. He saw two other officers whose names were stitched on their uniforms, Kowalski and Perez, joking near the evidence locker. He watched Perez take a sealed evidence bag, rip the corner open, pinch something out, and slip it into his pocket before resealing it with a piece of tape. Strike one, Ray noted mentally, tampering with evidence, theft. A moment later, a tall, spindly man in a cheap suit walked in. This was Detective Eddie Thorne. Ray recognized him from the dossier. Thorne was the bag man. He collected the protection money from the local gambling dens. Thorne walked straight to Sergeant Walsh's desk, dropped a thick brown envelope on it, and patted Walsh on the shoulder. Good haul this week, Doug, Thorne said, his voice carrying in the echoing room. Better be, Walsh grunted, not looking up from his report. I got a headache. Arrested a comedian out on Route 31. Claims he's Hoover's ghost. They both laughed. Strike two, Ray thought. Racketeering, bribery. Ray stood up and walked to the bars. Officer, he called out, I need my phone call. It is my constitutional right. Walsh looked up from across the room. He stood up, hitching his belt, and sauntered over to the cell. He held a styrofoam cup of coffee, looking at Ray like he was an insect in a jar. You know, Agent, Walsh used air quotes dripping with sarcasm, the phone lines are down. Tragedy, really. Tech guys are working on it. Might take a while. Walsh, Ray said, his voice dangerously quiet. You didn't check the credentials, did you? You tossed the wallet in the bag, and you didn't even look. I don't need to look at fake IDs, Walsh sneered. Go look, Ray challenged him. If I'm lying, you can tack on impersonating an officer. That's a felony. Make your case tighter. Go look. Walsh hesitated. The logic was sound. If the guy was faking, catching him with a fake badge was a slam dunk. Fine, Walsh spat. I'll go get your little toy badge, then I'm going to book you for it. Walsh turned and walked back to the booking desk. He grabbed the plastic property bag labeled John Doe. He ripped it open and dumped the contents on the counter. The expensive leather wallet thudded against the wood. Ray watched intently. Walsh flipped the wallet open. He pulled out the driver's license. Then he fingered the flap behind it. He pulled out a black leather booklet with a gold crest embossed on the front. Ray saw Walsh's shoulders stiffen. Walsh opened the booklet. The gold shield of the Federal Bureau of Investigation gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Below it was a photo of Ray Bennett and the text, Special Agent Raymond Bennett, clearance level, top secret/magic. Walsh stared at it. He rubbed his thumb over the badge, perhaps hoping the gold paint would smear, proving it was fake. It didn't. It was heavy. It was real. Walsh looked up. His eyes met Ray's through the bars. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a flicker of pure animalistic fear. He turned to Jenkins. "Get the chief," Walsh whispered, his voice cracking. "What?" Jenkins asked. "Get the chief," Walsh screamed, the panic taking over. "Now get Donnelly down here now!" Walsh looked back at the cell. Ray was just standing there, arms crossed, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. "The phone line, Sergeant," Ray called out. "Are they fixed yet?" Walsh didn't answer. He was frantically typing on his computer, likely trying to delete the arrest record he had just started. Ray stood calmly. He knew what Walsh didn't. When an agent with top-secret clearance triggers a duress signal, which Ray had done by entering a specific sequence of incorrect passcodes into his phone before they took it, the Bureau doesn't just call, they track. Ray's phone had been sitting on the booking desk for hours. The signal was stationary. "They're on their way, Sergeant," Ray said to the empty air. "I'd start practicing your apology, not that it will help." Suddenly, the front doors of the precinct swung open. It wasn't the FBI, not yet. It was Chief of Police Patrick Donnelly. He was a red-faced man who looked like he'd been interrupted halfway through a steak dinner. "Walsh, what the hell is this about?" Donnelly boomed. "I got a call from the mayor saying the DA is asking questions about a traffic stop." Walsh ran up to the chief, holding the badge like it was a live grenade. "Chief, look." Donnelly took the badge. He squinted at it. He looked at the photo. He looked at the cell. "Mother of God," Donnelly whispered. He walked over to the bars. "Agent Bennett," Donnelly asked, his voice trembling slightly. "There seems to be a misunderstanding." "Open the door," Ray said. "I can certainly do that, and we can discuss this in my office." Donnelly fumbled for keys. "I'm sure Sergeant Walsh here was just being overzealous. We can—" "I said, open the door," Ray cut him off. "But I'm not going to your office." The lock clicked. The door swung open. Ray stepped out. He didn't rub his wrists. He didn't stretch. He walked straight to the booking desk, picked up his watch, and strapped it on. "You're free to go, of course," Donnelly said, sweating. "We'll drop all charges. Expunge the record immediately." Ray turned to face the entire room. Every cop had stopped what they were doing. The silence was heavy. "I'm not going anywhere," Ray said. "And neither are you." "Excuse me," Donnelly asked, bristling, trying to regain some authority. "Now look here. I'm trying to be reasonable, but you don't give orders in my house." "This isn't your house anymore," Ray said calmly. He looked at the front entrance, and that wasn't the wind they heard. A low, thrumming sound began to vibrate the windows. It grew louder, a rhythmic thwop, thwop, thwop that shook the coffee in Walsh's cup. Helicopters. Then came the screech of tires, dozens of them. "What is that?" Walsh whispered. Ray walked over to Walsh, leaned in close, and whispered back. "That's karma." The sound outside wasn't just a helicopter. It was a squadron. The glass front doors of the Pine Ridge precinct rattled in their frames. Blue and red lights, brighter and more intense than the local cruisers, flooded the lobby, washing the pale faces of the officers in a chaotic strobe. Chief Donnelly rushed to the window, pulling back the blinds. He staggered back as if he'd been punched. It's an army," Donnelly stammered. Outside, 3 black SUVs had mounted the curb, blocking the exit. An armored Bearcat vehicle crushed the manicured hedges. Dozens of agents in full tactical gear emblazoned with the bright yellow FBI letters on their backs were swarming the perimeter. "Lock the door!" Walsh screamed, his survival instinct kicking in, illogical as it was. "Lock the damn door!" "Don't bother," Ray said, leaning against the booking desk, checking the time on his wristwatch. "They have a battering ram, and they're not in the mood to knock." A voice amplified by a megaphone boomed through the walls, shaking the dust from the ceiling tiles. "This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have a federal warrant for the premises. Open the doors and place your weapons on the ground. Failure to comply will be met with force." Officer Jenkins looked at Walsh, then at his own gun belt. He was shaking. "Sarge, what do we do?" "We hold the line," Walsh yelled, pulling his weapon. "This is our jurisdiction. They can't just—" "Put it down, you idiot," Ray barked, his voice cutting through the panic like a whip. "That is an FBI hostage rescue team out there. If you point that weapon at the door, they will turn you into pink mist before you clear the holster. Put it down." Walsh hesitated. He looked at Ray, seeing the absolute certainty in the agent's eyes. Crash. The front doors didn't just open, they disintegrated. A tactical ram smashed through the glass and metal, sending shards skittering across the linoleum. Flashbang grenades rolled in, not detonating, but serving as a terrifying warning. "Federal agents, get down! Get down!" The lobby was instantly flooded with operators. Laser sights swept across the room, painting the chests of every Pine Ridge officer. "Drop it!" An agent screamed at Walsh. Walsh's gun clattered to the floor. He raised his hands, his face drained of blood. Jenkins was already on his knees, sobbing. Chief Donnelly stood frozen, his hands half raised, looking like a statue of a defeated general. A man in a suit flanked by two tactical officers stepped through the shattered entrance. He was older, with silver hair and a face carved from granite. This was Assistant Director Cole, the head of the Birmingham field office. He scanned the room, ignoring the Pine Ridge cops, and locked eyes with Ray. "Agent Bennett," Cole said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. "Status." Ray pushed off the desk. He walked over to the property bag that Walsh had dumped out earlier. He picked up his badge and wallet, sliding them into his pocket. He picked up his cracked phone. "Secure, sir," Ray said. "But we have a significant amount of evidence to process, and I'm going to need a medic to document bruising on my wrists for the 18 U.S.C. 242 charge." Cole nodded. He turned to the tactical team. "Secure everyone. Nobody leaves. Seize all electronics, computers, phones, body cams. I want the servers pulled from the wall." Donnelly found his voice. "Now wait just a minute. You can't just storm a police station. I am the chief of police. I have friends in the governor's office." Cole walked up to Donnelly, holding up a thick stack of papers. "Chief Donnelly, this is a federal search and seizure warrant signed by a U.S. magistrate judge. And this," he handed him a second paper, "is an arrest warrant for you, Sergeant Doug Walsh. Detective Eddie Thorne and 14 other officers under the RICO Act." "RICO?" Donnelly gasped. "That's for mobsters." Ray stepped forward, standing toe-to-toe with the chief. "Exactly," Ray said coldly. "Organized crime, extortion, drug trafficking, evidence tampering, and deprivation of rights under color of law. You aren't a police department, Donnelly. You're a street gang with badges." Ray turned to the tactical team leader. "Cuff him. Cuff them all." The sound that followed was the most satisfying sound Ray had heard in years. It was the collective clicking of zip ties and handcuffs. Walsh was slammed against the wall by a burly agent. "You set me up!" Walsh screamed, spitting as he was frisked. "You planned this! You came here on purpose." Ray walked over to Walsh. He leaned in close so only Walsh could hear. "I didn't plan for you to be stupid, Doug," Ray whispered. "I planned to catch a corrupt system. You just happened to be the one who opened the door and invited the devil in. I told you made a mistake." Walsh was hauled away, kicking and screaming. Ray looked around the bullpen. The blue wall of silence had fallen. Agents were already boxing up files. Tech specialists were plugging into the mainframe. The Pine Ridge PD was being dismantled piece by piece. "Ray," Assistant Director Cole said, handing him a fresh bottle of water. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Ray said, rubbing his wrist where the handcuffs had dug in. "But they have a holding cell downstairs. A young kid named Tyler was hit for a broken taillight days ago. Check the logs. I think they've been holding him without charge to pressure his father into selling his shop." "We're on it," Cole said. "Go get checked out by the medic. Then if you're up for it, we have 17 interviews to conduct." Ray cracked his neck. "I'm not tired, sir. I'll take the lead on Walsh." Cole smiled grimly. "I thought you might say that." The interrogation room was different when you were on the other side of the table. Ray sat in the metal chair, a thick file folder in front of him. Across from him sat former Sergeant Doug Walsh. Walsh looked smaller now, without the uniform, without the gun, without the sunglasses. He was just a middle-aged bully who had run out of victims. He was handcuffed to the table loop. He had been crying, though he was trying to hide it with a scowl. "You can't keep me here," Walsh muttered. "I want my union rep." Your union rep is currently in the interview room down the hall, Ray said, flipping the file open. Turns out he was taking a cut of the seized cash from the drug busts. He's cutting a deal right now. He's not coming, Doug. Walsh's eyes widened. That's a lie, isn't it? Ray pulled a photo from the file and slid it across the table. It was a grainy surveillance photo. It showed Walsh meeting with a known meth distributor in the parking lot of a diner. Walsh was accepting a white envelope. You seized 2 kilos of methamphetamine from a courier on Interstate 65. You logged 1 kilo into evidence. You sold the other back to the distributor for $20,000. Walsh stared at the photo. You can't prove that's money. Could be a birthday card. True, Ray nodded. But we have the distributor. We picked him up an hour ago. He keeps very detailed ledgers. He lists you as the toll booth. Walsh went pale. But that's not what we're here to talk about, Ray continued, his voice conversational, almost friendly. That's just drug trafficking, 10 to 20 years. I want to talk about the traffic stops. I want to talk about the profiling. I want to talk about the false arrests. I want to talk about the fact that you and your squad have targeted minority drivers at a rate 400% higher than the state average. I follow my gut, Walsh spat. I know a criminal when I see one. Like me? Ray asked, raising an eyebrow. Walsh stayed silent. Here's the reality, Doug, Ray said, closing the file. The Department of Justice is filing a civil rights lawsuit against the city of Pine Ridge tomorrow morning. They are citing 17 officers, including you, as defendants. The city's insurance carrier has already signaled they will not cover criminal acts, which means the city is on the hook. Walsh sneered. I don't live in the city. I don't pay taxes here. No, Ray corrected, but the city will settle. Our analysts project a payout of around $10 million to the victims of your gut instinct over the years. And you know what happens when a city loses $10 million because of a police sergeant? Ray paused for effect. They strip your pension, Ray said softly. Walsh flinched as if he'd been slapped. You can't touch my pension. I earned that. Under the forfeiture laws for public corruption, yes, we can, and we will. Your house seized, your boat seized. That truck you love so much, government property. Ray stood up and walked to the mirror, turning his back on Walsh. But there is a way out, a small, narrow door. What? Walsh asked, his voice trembling. Detective Thorne, Ray said, turning back. Thorne is the bag man. He collects the money, but he doesn't keep it all. He kicks it up. Who does he kick it up to? Is it Donnelly? Is it the mayor? Walsh looked at the table. The silence stretched. He was doing the math. He was weighing his loyalty to the Brotherhood against the prospect of dying in a federal prison, broken alone. If I talk, Walsh whispered, I need protection. Thorne knows people. Bad people. Federal witness protection is on the table, Ray said. But only if you give me everything. The stops, the drugs, the money, the names, all of it. Walsh took a ragged breath. He looked up at Ray, his eyes red and defeated. The arrogance that had been there on the side of Route 31 was completely extinguished. Donnelly didn't know about the drugs, Walsh said, his voice barely audible. He's just incompetent. But the money, the protection money from the casinos, that goes to the district attorney. Ray's eyes narrowed. District Attorney Victor Lang. Yeah, Walsh nodded, tears finally spilling over. Lang runs the county. We just collect the rent. If we don't pay, he launches investigations. If we pay, the complaints disappear. Ray sat back down. This was bigger than he thought. He pulled a digital recorder from his pocket and set it on the table. State your name for the record, Ray commanded. Doug Walsh, he mumbled. Louder. Doug Walsh, he sobbed. Okay, Doug, Ray said, opening a fresh notepad. Start from the beginning. Tell me how you lost your badge. The wire felt itchy against Doug Walsh's skin. Or maybe it was just the nerves. The air at the Silver Oak Country Club smelled of jasmine and money. This was where the real power of Pine Ridge resided, not in the grubby precinct bullpen, but here among the white linen tablecloths and the clinking of crystal wine glasses. Ray Bennett sat in a surveillance van parked a half-mile away in a wooded service road. He watched the video feed from the button camera on Walsh's shirt. The image was grainy but stable. Beside Ray sat Assistant Director Cole and a team of tech specialists. The audio feed hissed with static before settling into clarity. Remember, Doug? Ray spoke into the headset, his voice feeding into a microscopic earpiece in Walsh's ear canal. You are desperate. You are scared. You need to tell him the feds are sniffing around. You need him to incriminate himself. Do not deviate from the script. I got it, Walsh whispered, wiping sweat from his forehead. Walsh stepped out of his truck, which was technically already seized property, though he was allowed to drive it one last time for this operation. He carried a heavy leather satchel. Inside was $50,000 in cash. Every single bill had been photocopied and dusted with a UV reactive powder. Walsh walked up the steps of the clubhouse. The valet looked at him with disdain. Walsh was wearing a polo shirt that was too tight, clearly out of place among the tuxedos and evening gowns inside. I'm here to see District Attorney Lang, Walsh told the maitre d'. Mr. Lang is in the library. He is expecting you, the host said, nose in the air. Walsh walked through the dining room. He felt the eyes of the city's elite on him. He felt naked. He entered the library, a dimly lit room lined with mahogany bookshelves and smelling of expensive cigars. District Attorney Victor Lang sat in a leather armchair by the fireplace. He was a man in his 60s, impeccably dressed with a face that smiled for billboards, but eyes that were as cold as a shark's. He was swirling a glass of scotch. Doug, Lang said, not standing up, you look terrible. Rough week, Walsh said, his voice trembling. He placed the bag on the low table between them. It's all there. The collection from the gambling dens on 4th Street, plus the tax from the highway stops. Lang took a sip of his scotch. Good. Although I heard a rumor, Doug. I heard there was some commotion at the precinct. Something about a Fed. Ray leaned forward in the van. This was it. Yeah, Walsh said, sitting on the edge of the sofa. That's why I'm here, Victor. A Fed got pulled over. Some guy named Bennett. It's bad. They raided the station. They took files. Lang laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Let them raid. I control the judges in this county, Doug. I control the grand jury. The FBI can sniff around all they want, but they need evidence. And what do they have? A few complaints from drug dealers. Who's going to believe them over a decorated district attorney? But what if they find the ledger? Walsh asked, improvising. The one where you track the payments. Lang's smile faded. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. There is no ledger, you idiot. That's why I deal in cash. That's why you bring me this bag every month. No paper trail, no jail. Lang reached for the bag. He unzipped it. He ran his fingers over the stacks of bills. 50,000? Lang asked. 55, Walsh said. We pushed the guys hard this month. Excellent, Lang smirked. You see, Doug, this is how the world works. The sheep graze, the wolves eat, and the shepherd takes his cut. You're a good wolf. Now get out of here. I have a dinner reservation. Lang closed the bag and set it on the floor beside his chair. Possession. Take him, Ray said into the mic. Go, 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 Cole shouted to the tactical teams. Back in the library, the windows suddenly exploded inward. For the second time in 2 days, Doug Walsh hit the floor with his hands over his head. Flashbangs detonated near the fireplace, sending clouds of white smoke billowing through the room. Federal agents, nobody move! Tactical operators poured in through the patio doors and the main entrance. The library was swarming with laser sights. District Attorney Victor Lang stood up, dropping his glass. It shattered on the hardwood. What is the meaning of this? Lang bellowed, his face turning purple. Do you know who I am? Ray Bennett walked into the room through the smoke, stepping over the broken glass. He wore his FBI windbreaker, now his badge hanging visibly around his neck. Victor Lang, Ray said, his voice cutting through the noise. You are under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, and obstruction of justice. You have nothing, Lang screamed, pointing a finger at Ray. I'll have your badge. I'll sue the Bureau into the ground. Ray walked over to the leather satchel. He picked it up. He pulled out a UV light from his pocket and clicked it on. He shone the purple light onto Lang's hands. They glowed a bright fluorescent orange, the dye from the bills. Ray shone the light on the bag. Orange. He shone it on Lang's expensive suit jacket. Orange fingerprints. You were saying? Ray asked. Lang looked at his glowing hands. He looked at Walsh, who was being hauled up by an agent. Walsh! Lang hissed. You rat! I learned from the best, Walsh muttered, looking away. Ray nodded to the agents. Cuff him and read him his rights. Make sure everyone in the dining room sees him walk out in irons. As they marched the district attorney out through the main dining room, the hush was absolute. The wealthiest citizens of Pine Ridge watched in shock as their golden boy was dragged away. His hands cuffed behind his back, his head hung low. Ray watched the procession. He felt a heavy weight lift off his chest. The head of the snake was cut off. Now, the body would die. The fallout was nuclear. The arrest of District Attorney Victor Lang and the entire command staff of the Pine Ridge Police Department didn't just make the local news. It made national headlines. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. They were all parked on the lawn of the courthouse. Black FBI agent dragged to jail. The chyrons read, 17 badges gone. The dismantling of the department was swift and brutal. Assistant Director Cole and Ray Bennett set up a temporary command post in City Hall. They weren't just investigating crimes anymore. They were effectively running the city's law enforcement until a new, clean interim chief could be brought in from the state capitol. Then came the lawsuits. Ray stood in the back of the courtroom. The air was cool and conditioned and smelled of lemon polish. It was civil court this time. The class action lawsuit, the people versus the city of Pine Ridge, was being finalized. The plaintiff's table was crowded. There was Tyler, the young man whose father had been pressured. There was Mrs. Ellis, an elderly woman whose car had been seized and sold at auction because her grandson had a single joint in his pocket. There were dozens of them, black, white, Hispanic, all victims of Walsh's wolf pack. The city attorney stood up. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had been trying to hold back a tsunami with a teaspoon. "Your Honor," the attorney said, "the city of Pine Ridge has reached a settlement agreement with the plaintiffs." "Proceed," the judge said. "The city admits to a systemic failure of oversight. The city agrees to the immediate termination of the 17 officers named in the federal indictment. Furthermore, the city agrees to a total payout of $10 million to be divided among the victims of these illegal practices." A murmur went through the courtroom. $10 million for a town the size of Pine Ridge. It was a crippling blow. It meant no road repairs for years. It meant the new stadium project was canceled. It meant property taxes were going up, but it also meant justice. Ray watched the faces of the victims. Some were crying, some were smiling. They were finally being heard. After the hearing, Ray walked out onto the courthouse steps. The media was in a frenzy, but Ray slipped through the side exit. He walked down the street toward the police precinct. It was quiet now. The sign out front was being repainted. The windows were fixed, but the parking lot told the real story. There was a row of personal vehicles being towed away. Ray saw a familiar truck. It was a lifted Ford F-150, blacked out with custom rims. It was Doug Walsh's pride and joy. A repo man was hooking it up to a tow truck. Walsh was there, standing on the sidewalk in civilian clothes, jeans, and a stained T-shirt. He was out on bail awaiting his federal trial, but his assets were already frozen. He watched his truck being lifted into the air. Ray stopped a few feet away. Walsh turned and saw him. He looked aged. He had lost weight. The swagger was gone, replaced by a hollow, haunted look. "You happy?" Walsh asked, his voice raspy. "Happiness doesn't factor into it, Doug," Ray said calmly. "You took an oath. You broke it. You hurt people. This is just the bill coming due." "I lost everything," Walsh said, gesturing to the tow truck. "My wife left me. She took the kids to her sister's in Alabama. The bank took the house. That truck was the last thing I had." "You didn't lose it," Ray corrected him. "You threw it away. You threw it away the moment you decided that a badge made you a king instead of a servant." Walsh looked at the ground. He kicked a loose pebble. I thought I was doing the job, keeping the town safe." "No," Ray said, stepping closer. "You were keeping the town afraid. There's a difference." The tow truck engine roared to life. Walsh flinched. He watched as his truck was dragged away down the street, disappearing around the corner. "What happens to you now?" Walsh asked, looking back at Ray. "I go back to D.C., Ray said. "I have a new case next week. Another town, maybe another Walsh. We'll see." "I hope I never see you again," Walsh whispered. "If you're lucky," Ray said, "you won't." Ray turned and walked away. He walked past the spot where the patrol cars were parked. He saw new officers, younger, diverse, nervous but respectful, getting briefed by the interim chief. They were being told about the new body camera policies. They were being told about the zero tolerance for bias. Ray reached his rental car, a new one, not the Cadillac. He opened the door and paused. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Assistant Director Cole. "Lang just pleaded guilty. He's taking 15 years to avoid a life sentence. It's over, Ray. Great work." Ray looked at the screen. He looked at the sky. The southern sun was still hot, but the humidity seemed to have broken. The air was clearer. He got in the car. He didn't speed. He drove exactly the speed limit. But this time, as he passed a police cruiser parked on the shoulder, the officer inside gave him a nod. Ray nodded back. The badges were gone. The money was paid. The karma had been delivered. But Ray knew the work wasn't done. It was never really done. The rain in Washington, D.C. was different from the rain in Alabama. In Pine Ridge, the storms were violent and hot, steaming off the asphalt like a kettle. In D.C., the rain was cold, gray, and persistent. It washed over the J. Edgar Hoover building in relentless sheets, blurring the view of the Capitol from the window of the senior special agent's office. Ray Bennett sat at his mahogany desk, the leather chair creaking softly as he leaned back. Back in his office after the events in Pine Ridge. On his desk sat a heavy spiral-bound document, the Pine Ridge Consent Decree, Final Compliance and Reform Review. It was 300 pages of legalese that summarized the destruction of a corrupt regime. Ray flipped it open to the executive summary. The numbers were staggering, even to him. Personnel terminated, 19, including the chief and administrative support staff involved in the cover-up. Federal indictments, 17. Civil settlement payout, $10.4 million. Municipal bond rating code downgrade, AA to B-. The city of Pine Ridge was financially crippled. The settlement had drained the general fund. Ray had read the reports. The city had to cut trash collection. The public library was now closed on weekends. The 4th of July fireworks had been canceled. This was the part of justice that nobody talked about in the movies. When you cut out a cancer, the body still has to recover from the surgery. The innocent citizens of Pine Ridge were paying the price for the sins of their protectors. It was a bitter pill, but it was necessary. The alternative was leaving the infection to spread. There was a knock on the doorframe. "You reading the obituary?" Ray looked up. It was Assistant Director Cole. He looked older than he had in Alabama, the lines around his eyes etched deeper. He held 2 cups of coffee steaming in the sterile office air. "Just reviewing the bill," Ray said, accepting the cup. $10 million. That town won't pave a pothole for a decade. Cole sat in the chair opposite the desk, blowing on his coffee. "Better potholes than innocent men in prison, Ray. You saw the audit. Walsh's crew had seized over $2 million in assets in recent years alone. Cars, jewelry, cash. They were robbing people on the highway and calling it civil forfeiture. We didn't just stop a bad cop. We stopped a highway robbery ring." "I know," Ray sighed, closing the file. "How is Walsh?" "Sentencing was yesterday," Cole said quietly. "I didn't think you'd want to go." "I didn't." "He got 12 years, Cole said. Federal guidelines were strict. The judge wanted to make an example. No parole in the federal system, so he'll do at least 10. His wife didn't show up. He cried when the gavel came down. Actually wept." Ray nodded slowly. He felt no joy in it. He felt no glee. He just felt a cold sense of balance being restored. A debt paid. "And Lang?" Ray asked about the district attorney. "Lang is the interesting one," Cole said, a grim smile touching his lips. "He's singing. He's giving us judges. He's giving us state senators. Turns out Pine Ridge was just a franchise. The corruption goes up to the state capitol. We're going to be busy for a long time." Ray turned his chair to look out the window again. The rain was picking up. "It never ends, does it, sir?" Ray asked softly. "We cut off one head and 2 more grow back." "That's the job, Ray," Cole said, his voice firm. "We aren't exterminators. We're gardeners. We pull the weeds so the flowers have a chance. If you stop pulling, the weeds take over. That's it. That's the whole job." Cole reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a manila envelope sealed with the red confidential tape of the Bureau. He slid it across the desk. It stopped right on top of the Pine Ridge report. "Speaking of weeds," Cole said. Ray looked at the envelope. He didn't touch it yet. He knew what it was. It was the next assignment, the next town, the next Walsh. "Where?" Ray asked. "Nevada," Cole answered. "Small county called Desert Ridge, middle of the desert. The sheriff there has been elected 5 times running. He runs the county like a fiefdom. We have reports of hikers disappearing. We have reports of tourists being shaken down. And we have a darker tip that he's using the county impound lot as a transshipment point for the cartel." Ray stared at the envelope. He could feel the heat of the desert just thinking about it. "The profile?" Ray asked. "High-stakes gambler," Cole said. We're setting you up as a whale, a rich tech investor from San Francisco with a gambling problem and a trunk full of cash. You're going to drive a Porsche this time. Flashy, arrogant, the kind of guy a bully can't resist taking down a peg. Ray picked up the envelope. He weighed it in his hand. It felt heavy, heavier than paper should feel. "I need a week," Ray said. "I need to decompress from Pine Ridge. I need to get my head right." "Take 2 weeks," Cole said, standing up. "But Ray, be careful on this one. Walsh was a thief. This sheriff in Nevada, our analysts think he's a killer. If he pulls you over, he might not be looking to arrest you." "I know," Ray said. Cole walked to the door, then paused. "You did good work, Ray. That kid, Tyler, the one they were holding, he's back in college. His dad kept the shop. You saved that family. Don't forget that part." Cole left. Ray sat alone in the silence. He opened the drawer of his desk. Inside lay his badge, the gold shield that Walsh had been so terrified of. He picked it up, running his thumb over the raised letters. Special Agent. He thought about the moment on the highway, the fear in his gut when the cuffs went on, the absolute powerlessness of being a black man in the South, in the grip of a racist system. It was a fear that no amount of training could fully erase. He put the badge back in the drawer. He stood up and walked to the closet in the corner of his office. He opened it. Inside hung his suits, the navy blues, the charcoal grays, the uniform of the Washington elite. But in the back, pushed to the side, were the costumes, the leather jackets, the loud Hawaiian shirts, the gold chains. He reached for a silk shirt, something a tech millionaire might wear on a bender in Vegas. He held it up. He walked over to the mirror on the wall. He loosened his tie. He unbuttoned his collar. He ruffled his hair, messing up the neat government-approved trim. He looked at his reflection. The eyes of Special Agent Bennett faded, and the eyes of the new character, the reckless, wealthy target, began to emerge. He wasn't Ray Bennett anymore. Not for the next stretch. He was the bait. He walked back to his desk and picked up the Nevada file. He ripped the red tape. He pulled out the photo of the target, Sheriff Hank Maddox, a massive man with a cowboy hat and eyes like flint. "All right, Sheriff," Ray whispered to the empty room. "Let's see if you take the bait." Ray tossed the file into his briefcase and snapped it shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet office. He grabbed his coat and walked out, turning off the lights. The office went dark, but the city outside was glowing. Somewhere in Nevada, a corrupt sheriff was counting his money, thinking he was the king of the world. He had no idea that the storm was already on its way. He had no idea that a man in a Porsche was coming to burn his kingdom to the ground. And Ray was ready to drive into the fire one more time. The story of Ray Bennett and the Pine Ridge Police Department is a stark reminder of a simple, often forgotten truth. Authority without accountability is nothing more than tyranny. Sergeant Walsh and his wolf pack believed they were untouchable. They believed the badge on their chest gave them ownership over the people they were sworn to serve. They thought the highway was their own private hunting ground, but they forgot the most dangerous variable in their equation: the victim who refuses to be a victim. In the end, the system worked. But we must remember why it worked. It didn't work because of luck. It worked because one man had the courage and the power to force it to work. The karma that hit Pine Ridge wasn't magic. It was the inevitable crushing consequence of unchecked greed meeting immovable justice. When 17 badges hit the floor and the city lost $10 million, it wasn't just a punishment. It was a message sent to every corrupt precinct, every crooked judge, and every power-tripping officer in the country. The eyes of justice are always watching, even on a lonely stretch of highway, and you never know who is in the car. And that is the incredible true crime-inspired story of how one routine traffic stop bankrupted a corrupt city and ended 17 careers. Now, I have a question for you. Do you think justice was truly served? $10 million is a lot of money, but does a financial penalty really make up for years of fear and abuse? If you were the judge, would you have given Walsh more than 12 years? Let me know your verdict in the comments down below. I read every single one, and I want to know what you think. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes justice and the ultimate karma, please destroy that like button. Hit it harder than Ray hit Walsh with the truth. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you never miss a video. We have a massive story coming next week about the Nevada sheriff mentioned at the end. You do not want to miss that one. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and remember, check your mirrors. The story of Ray Bennett and the corrupt police department in Pine Ridge leaves us with a powerful, deeply emotional lesson that resonates far beyond any badge or courtroom. True power always comes with responsibility, and when that responsibility is betrayed, justice may be slow, but it is inevitable. We watch a man who swore to protect the innocent instead become the very predator he was meant to stop. For years, Sergeant Doug Walsh and his circle abused their authority, turning traffic stops into traps, evidence into profit, and fear into a currency they spent freely. They believed their uniforms made them untouchable kings on the highway. Yet in the end, one ordinary-looking driver in a rental car reminded them, and all of us, that no one stands above the law. The moment those 17 badges hit the floor and a city was forced to write a $10 million check, something profound happened. It wasn't just punishment. It was a raw, humbling restoration of balance. This story breaks your heart and lifts it at the same time. It shows how easily good people can suffer when those in power forget they are servants, not rulers. It reminds us that courage isn't always loud or dramatic. It can arrive quietly, in the steady hands of someone who knows right from wrong and refuses to stay silent. Most importantly, it teaches that real accountability isn't about revenge. It's about healing. It's about protecting the vulnerable, giving victims their voices back, and making sure the next generation of officers understands that a badge is a promise, not a permission slip. If Ray Bennett's journey moved you, if you felt the sting of injustice and the sweet relief of karma, tell me in the comments, what does this story teach you about power and integrity in your own life? Would you have shown Walsh any mercy, or was 12 years exactly what justice demanded? Have you ever witnessed someone abuse their authority? How did it change the way you see the world? If this kind of powerful, thought-provoking storytelling touches your soul, do me a favor and smash that like button. Hit it hard, like Ray hit the truth. And if you want more real-life inspired tales of courage, corruption, and ultimate justice, subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's coming next. We've got an even bigger story about that Nevada sheriff waiting for you. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there, check your mirrors, and remember, the road to justice may be long, but it always finds its way home.